morning and welcome to Urban Life Church Online. It is so good to have you with us this morning, this afternoon, this evening, whenever it is that you're watching or tuning in. My name is Kelsey and it is a beautiful day here where we are. It's a little bit, the sun is kind of coming out of the clouds and it's a beautiful morning for us to be together for church. So, hey, why don't you comment? Let me know where you're watching from. What is it that you're up to? Have you made your coffee? Because I'll be honest, this morning I really needed like an extra dose of coffee. I don't know about you, but that's where I was this morning. So let me know if you've had your coffee, if you've made it, if you're having breakfast, and where you might be watching this morning. As I said, it is so good to be together. And I just want to remind you that you belong here. Wherever you are, wherever you come from, whatever you are going through, I just want to remind you that you belong here. And it is so good to have you with us this morning. We're excited for what God is busy doing, and we've had a lot of stories and testimonies coming out of giving. And one of the things is that if you're a person who tithes, you'll know that tithes bring testimonies, right? And it's been so cool to see what God has been doing. He is faithful. I don't know, maybe you're sitting somewhere and you're going, oh, I don't know if I can tithe, I don't know if I can afford to, but I just want to honor you, Urban Life Church community. You're a faithful people and you're a generous people, and it's beautiful to see what you've been doing. And so if you're sitting in a place where you go, I'm not sure I can tithe, or I'm not sure I can afford it, we're going to check out a video clip shortly of Dawn, who has a beautiful story of what God has done in her life. So why don't we check out this story together?
I'm Dawn Grabe, and Stephen Grabe is my son. He's very involved with the church. I'm an attorney and I do conveyancing, do property transfers. God has been speaking to me about tithing all my life, you know, and you think it's just the church that wants money. Every time the service starts, it's tithing, you know, but every time they talk about tithing, you feel guilty, and I think, oh, you know, it's not for me. I'm not hearing this. Money is tight. It's always tight. So where must you find the money to tithe? And Stephen said to me last year already, you know, Mom, I'm tithing. I thought about this a lot, and I said to God, you know, if I can get work, I can give. Before I even thought about tithing, before I realized that it was really important to do, God gave me a job. And you know, Warren had that one sermon, well, it was a sort of a series quite a while ago about how you break up your finances, and that, I think, sort of brought the message home for me, that you don't give what's left, you give before you spend anything else. And I've been doing that. And I started just giving 10% of everything, yes, and it's gross, it's not net. And I have just not looked back. The work is just flowing in. It's really, really just unbelievable. And if everybody did that, can you imagine where the church would go, where everybody would go, bringing out the word of God with money.
You know what I love about that story is that it had so much to do with her son as well. And I think sometimes when we hear these stories, we forget that actually we're in this thing together, that actually we can influence each other, we can do this together. And I think that's what's so cool about our church community, is that we're in it together, that we belong here. And I think it's just amazing to see what God has been busy doing and what he is doing. And he is always faithful. So hey, maybe you need that reminder this morning that God is faithful. He is faithful. And I promise you now, tithing is one thing. When you start doing it, I'm telling you right now, you will keep on doing it. You know, and it is a thing of just being faithful with the small, step by step, day by day. So if you've just joined us, welcome to Church Online. It is good to have you with us. We've just heard an incredible story from Dawn about her tithing testimony. And you know what, this morning we have actually a bunch of stories to share, right? We've been in a new series called Carpool Worship. We've had some carpool stories, and this morning we're going to continue with those stories. This one is actually so good, we had to break it up into two parts, right? So we have part 1 and part 2. in the comments, why don't you tell me if you've been enjoying carpool worship? We feel like there's something that is happening. We want to be a part of it. We want to be a part of the stories of what God is doing, of celebrating and singing together and lifting and raising our voices and telling those stories to you wherever you might be. And so this carpool story is 2 parts. Part 1 is this week. Part 2 is next week. And we can't wait to share it with you. It is a story of redemption. It is a story of returning. It honestly is a story that just points you to Jesus. And so I have Donnie and Darlene in the car with me, which is awesome. So let's check out this carpool story. Welcome, Donnie, Darlene.
Thank you.
Yeah, why don't you tell people who Donnie and Darlene are?
So we are currently serving as part of the eldership of Urban Life. We've been part of the church right from the beginning. We've got 2 kids, one in Cape Town, one in Soweto, both married.
3 kids.
Yeah, we have 3 kids.
Maybe tell us a little bit about your other daughter, or the daughter that maybe people don't know about.
In around 1996, a young girl of 14 came from the UK. Her mom sent her away from the UK to South Africa to get her away from the drug lords who were chasing her. She was an addict, and so she came to South Africa, but her dad was she and her dad hadn't seen her for years. It didn't last long before that kind of didn't work out. A family member, actually Darlene's dad, saw her. He was in a restaurant with some people. So they had a short conversation, and Darlene's dad gave her, she was talking about coming to Joburg, and Darlene's dad, he gave her Darlene's number and said, if you're ever in trouble, phone these people.
There's this young lady from Newcastle in the UK, and she's lonely, and her dad actually lives in Joburg, and she doesn't know anybody, and they've moved here 2 weeks ago, and maybe you could just connect with her. So yeah, that's what I did. I phoned her.
What happened from there?
Then Darlene gets a phone call at work one day. And what did she say, Darlene?
She says, I'm in a pub somewhere in Edenvale, and yeah, she told me a little bit of what had happened, but basically it had broken up with her and her dad, and she had nobody to go to.
And she was how old?
She was 14 at this
Just
point,
turned
so we
14.
couldn't just, okay, we're going
Yeah.
to take her into our home. So we got this young girl,
Yeah.
and
Our son was 3, Johan was 3 years old.
yeah, so we got involved with the authorities and all this kind of stuff. She lived with us a little bit. So I went to bed one night. I had a 3-year-old child. I woke up the next morning and I had a teenage daughter in my house,
Yeah.
living there.
Who was smoking.
Was smoking, still on drugs.
And just on that, like, how do you navigate that with, like you say, you have a 3-year-old, your child is there, there's someone in your home. I mean, that can't be easy necessarily.
You know what, she didn't even think about it.
So the honest,
Really?
the honest
Yeah.
truth
I mean,
is,
like, that's great, because I think that honesty
sometimes
is-
ignorance is helpful. We were really dumb. We're like, okay, we'll do this. People around us were saying, are you sure? Are you sure? And we're like, oh, what do we do? And so actually she was with us a few days, and then we asked her to look after Johan for a night so we can go out, and it just blew her away. We didn't know it at the time. She told us years later that was what made a shift.
Oh,
We
wow.
trusted her. Nobody ever trusted her.
Sure.
And so we trusted her with our son, and
And he loved her, absolutely.
yeah, he responded so
Big
well to
sister.
her, and she was his big sister and all that. But then we went on this journey of, okay, she can't stay with us. She,
What do you do? Yeah.
they told us what we have to do. She had to go to like a detention center of some
It
description.
was like a juvenile facility.
Juvenile detention center. So they put her in there. So what we decided to do was, we're not going to just let her disappear in that. So we stayed on the case of the authorities, because we said, we'll look after her. But they said, no, we've got to work this whole system out. And so what we did was, every week after church on a Sunday, we'd pack ourselves and Johan in the car and a picnic lunch, and off we'd go to Edenvale to the detention center. That also blew her away. The fact that we came back week after week and then
Started softening. And
yeah, she started softening towards us. And it's really a story. I mean, it's like, we did this, we did that, whatever, but it's a story of God's grace, really.
Come on, yeah.
Because God was really giving us the emotional resources and all that to do this. It's not like we're such really wonderful people, you know.
We asked if we could take her out for church on Sunday mornings.
Oh yes, that's right.
And she hadn't been to church before, so she'd grown up without church. So eventually they don't allow people out of that place, but we built up a reputation with them, so then they said okay. And so we went and we fetched her in the mornings before church drove through, and the first Sunday was, it was just so delightful, just so it was amazing. Johan was proud of his big sister, she had her little brother, and so she just kind of like pointed to me, I'm going for a smoke, and I said okay. And then I thought, gee, I wonder where she is. She's been gone long, so I went looking for her, and somebody pointed to the mother's room, and she was sitting in the mother's room chatting with her moms, having a ciggy, and it was amazing. And in that time, over the next while, we landed up giving her life to Jesus. And it was just a remarkable, amazing thing.
Yeah, and then she was placed in our care, and in the meantime she'd come off drugs, her life had been turned around, and then we managed to get her into a school.
First time since she was 11.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's quite a thing.
And she was at what age when she got into school again?
14 going on 15.
Sure.
So she did well. She made some good friends. So she really learned about church community, school community. She loved this whole thing of a family. This was new to her.
And the first time we grounded her.
And then, well, that's quite an interesting thing, because then we started this thing of, okay, so we got to create some boundaries and whatever. She wanted to go out with her friends. And so we created this, okay, I'm going to fetch you at a certain time, and then
This is what it's going to
and then we extended it, and then, okay, now your friends can bring you back. That was a whole journey. And then one night she came back late, so I said, okay, you're grounded. And so we gave her this big story, the consequences of your actions. You will pay a price. And she said, is there one thing, can I just do one thing before, because there's no phone calls, blah, blah, blah. Like, can I just do one thing before the grounding starts? I'm like, what do you want to do? No, she wants to phone her friend. I'm like, okay. So she phoned a friend, and we listened.
Just around the corner.
And she was, guess what? I've been grounded.
Oh, wow.
She was so excited to be disciplined.
Cool. Grounded?
She was excited to be disciplined for the first time in her life.
Wow.
She received discipline that came out of a place of love and acceptance. The story shifted when we went to Vryheid in Northern Natal to take over a church, to lead a church there, and she went with us. And the Christmas just before we went, Christmas just before we went, she went back to the UK for Christmas.
We've been doing reunification with the family.
So we were working on a reunification with her family. We wanted to restore the relationship with her mom. It was never our intention to keep her away from her mom.
Okay.
And so she went back. And Christmas was amazing. Everybody was happy to see her. Everything was exciting. Things, and it's a little bit like you go on that holiday, and everything is perfect.
Yes, and everything seems fine.
And so when she came back, she wanted to go back and live in England.
Okay.
And so she hadn't done her matric, and they'd said to her, come. They said, matric is nothing, just come. And she'd had this amazing experience. And so
just on that, like for you, Darlene, when you heard that, like what, I mean, it was a little while ago, but can you remember like how you felt? Was it an immediate like?
My heart just was scrunched. I just like, no, this is just so wrong. This is not right. I knew, besides the emotional side of being now a mom and having walked such a long journey, and we've been through so much through her teenage years together, from teaching her how to study again to all sorts of things, to now hearing that she's actually going, and it's just like hard. So it was a very hard thing. So that's when we drove her to the airport, and it was absolutely a bitter goodbye.
Sure.
It was a very, very hard goodbye. It was that goodbye that you
I told her this was not a good idea.
Okay.
And so there was this thing of, it was not friction, but this thing of, we're not happy, and it's not happy because we just want to keep you. We don't think you're ready. We're concerned that you're going into an unreal situation.
Sure.
So she went back.
It was a very
I was going to say, and when after that, was it a thing that you kept in touch with her?
So we kept in touch with her.
Yes, regularly.
And we sent messages and all this kind of stuff. And then slowly she went quiet. She just disappeared. So for many years we wondered what had happened to her, what's going on, what can we do? And then a crucial moment was in 2021. There was a wedding. And the wedding was the bride was one of her friends from school.
Okay.
And so we went to this wedding, and at the wedding, this girl says to us, "Your daughter has emailed me,
Sure.
and she wants to know if you guys are still open to be in touch with her. And you want to see Darlene kind of emotionally."
I can imagine. Just
And so we were so excited. We were like, this is the answer to prayer. It didn't come when we hoped the answer would come.
Yeah.
And so we started, she gave us an email address, and we emailed.
Amazing. And now I think it's time for us to take a short coffee break. So let's go get some coffee. You know what's the best part? There's still part 2 of this story, and honestly, it gets so much better. So I want to encourage you, next week tune in to see what happens. It's honestly an incredible story, as I said before, of redemption, of like the returning daughter, and it is honestly one of the most beautiful real life stories of what God has done. And we're celebrating as a church what God is busy doing. And you know what I love about this morning is that we have more praise reports than we have prayer requests, right? And I love that because it means that as a church, we are celebrating what God has done. We are celebrating His goodness together. And I love that there's more praise than there is prayer. But hey, if you have a praise report, if God has done something in your life, wouldn't you let me know in the comments? And at the same time, if there's something you're trusting God for in this moment, I want you to put it into the chat as well. Let's pray together as a church. And so we're celebrating Him for His provision, for His goodness, for visa, for His guidance, for a successful business launch, for financial breakthrough, and for His peace. You know, if you need financial breakthrough, He'll do it again. He's done it before and He'll do it again. And we're trusting for financial breakthrough. There is someone who's praying for financial provision. So I love that we get to celebrate what God has done. And as a church, we get to trust that He's going to do it again. And He's going to time and time again, He's going to come through because He is faithful. So I love that we're celebrating what He's already done, but we're trusting Him to do it again. For a godly spouse, for forgiveness, to grow more steadfast in faith. And hey, if you have something that you're trusting God for, why don't you put it in the comments, put it in the chat now. If you're watching this and it's after the time, you can go to Church Center, download the app and put in your prayer and praise reports, because we want to pray with you. We don't just want this to be a moment now, but we actually want to have a culture of prayer and praying together as a church. So hey, won't you pray with me wherever you are? Let's raise our voices in prayer as we trust God to move into these situations. So God, I thank You that You are faithful. I thank You that we can celebrate what You're busy doing, but we can also trust You to do it again. Where people need financial provision, God, I pray that You would provide. I pray for business ventures, God. I pray for somebody to find a godly spouse. We're trusting that You're going to move there, God. And I thank You that in all of these things You are faithful in everything that You do, that we can trust You, that we can trust You to move, God, in ways that we've never seen before, and we can celebrate everything that You have done because You are a good, kind, and faithful Father. Amen. Amen. It is so good to have you with us this morning, and we're going to get ready to continue with our Jesus Is series, and we have Mash preaching this morning, and he's talking around Jesus is the source. The source. It is a beautiful message around John 15. And so I want to encourage you to get your notebook, your pen, whatever it might be that you take notes on. Maybe it's your phone. set aside some of the distractions that so easily, shift our attention away from Jesus. And let's take a moment now to hear what Mash has to say. I'm trusting that God is going to move wherever you are in this moment. And I'm excited to hear. So, Mash, it's over to you.
Wow. Hello, guys. Welcome to Church Online at Urban Life Church. My name is Rati Mashego. Some people call me Mash. Some people call me Mashego, but let's just go with Mash. And I've been at Urban Life Church for the past, let's call it 5-6 months. And I've really, really been enjoying my time here. And I think what I've really enjoyed is when I started here, we were in the series called Let's Grow Up. And I think where it brought me and my wife as we joined here was into this narrative of, guys, we as a church are being called to grow up in spiritual maturity. We're preparing ourselves for growth. And I've really, really enjoyed being a part of that. Now, speaking about this new series we're going into as we wrap up the year, as we wrap up 2022, which is incredible because, wow, guys, the year is almost over. That's wild to me. But as we wrap up, we've decided that as a church, we really want to make a lot of noise and a lot of attention on who Jesus is. We care about Jesus. We love Jesus. We love that we are loved by Jesus. We've started a series called Jesus Is, fill in the blank. Last week, we had Warren preaching on Jesus Is All In. If you haven't watched that first sermon of the series, go have a look. Warren preached an incredible word from the book of Luke. This week, however, we're moving forward. We're going into the next week, and I'm going to be preaching on Jesus Is. I'll let you know in a second. Now, I don't know about you guys, but over the past, since the pandemic, maybe, I have become a plant dad, right? And I know everyone's a something parent. It's either you're a pet mom or you know the vibe, but I've become a plant dad, right? And I've actually really enjoyed this, and that's why we're here. That's actually why I've become a plant dad, and what I've really enjoyed about it is I've started to see where I fail in nurturing something, right? And where I thrive. So we have about 7 orchids at home. We have a bit of an orchid sanctuary because I love orchids. And somehow I'm very good at taking care of orchids. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's what do they call it? The green thumb. That thing. You know what I'm saying? I've taken care of orchids, revived them. They've come back to life. It's been incredible. We've even grown this little, we have a little veggie patch there by the house. We've grown some vegetables, grown some fruits. My favorite thing so far, we've grown a watermelon. I know it's crazy, but from the little seed from a watermelon from Woolworths, I took that seed, I just put it in the soil there, and I forgot it for some time, and then it sprouted and started growing. And as the months grew, I never knew that watermelons grow the way they grow. So it crept out the ground, and then it started doing this viney thing. And I was like, oh, that's weird because it's a viney thing. And anyway, so it grew and I really enjoyed it, right? I've really developed my love for the garden. But there's this one plant. There's a plant. It's called a Zentideschia. I know this sounds weird. I don't think I said that properly. It's a lily, right? It's this lily that comes up with these floppy leaves and these beautiful flowers like this, if that makes sense. And we got given one of these. We've actually been given 2 of these. We got given one of these, and I took care of this thing because I knew I was a plant dad. I can take care of plants. Took care of it, watered it. It was a good time. 1, 2, 3, the leaves start going yellow, and it starts looking a little, and I was like, okay, I don't know what's going on here because none of my plants go, So the leaves started and I was like, oh my goodness, this is a problem. And then more of them were starting, and then a few, and then I was like, okay, this is a problem. So I reached out to my Instagram community because that's what we do, right? As millennials, something goes wrong with our plant, something goes wrong with our pet. We ask our friends, what is going on? Tell me what to do because I don't want to kill a plant. I reached out to the people, they come through. The Instagram community is strong. So it was either I'm overwatering it or I'm underwatering it. Some people were like, it's too much light. It's not enough light. Some people were also just like, bro, you need to repot that thing. That thing is suffocating. And I was like, oh, goodness. Okay, I'm about to kill this plant. This is bad. This is, actually I have a plant that looks exact. So this is the Zentideschia. I know. Okay, I know. I don't want to hear it. Okay, He is. So this is what it was doing. And people were like, okay, underwater, overwater, not so sure. It's bad. Let's be honest, guys. It's bad. I don't know what to say to you. It's just bad. And I remember saying to my wife, because I gave it some plant food, and I was like, I hope this plant food does what it needs to do. I just hope it doesn't die. I gave it like a day or two, and it started looking exactly like this. And at this point, I said to my wife, I was like, listen, wife, I love you, but our plant is gonna die. It's dead. Like, I can't do it. There's nothing, I can't. It's finished. And she was like, okay, you tried your best. You did what you could. So I let it die. A very sad death, unfortunately. And then like a day or 2, 3 days passed because I was unwilling to throw away the parts because I was like, I will not accept failure like this. I won't. So the pot was sitting there in our house and I was like, okay, cool. Well, the plant's dead. I don't know, whatever. The leaves are gone. It's finished. And then 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, this shoot, like these 4 shoots, just like out of the ground, just popped up. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So these shoots popped up and then they started growing as they popped up. I was like, what's going on? And this is what the shoots look like, right? Like these little things, they just popped up and they were like, how's it? And they grew from this point into these massive leaves, and this is the original plant, right? This is the original plant that died. This is the second cycle that this thing has gone through of it dying and then shooting back up. So this is the second time I'm seeing shoots out of nowhere. This time was bad though, because this thing had died and I even put it on the bottom shelf of the bookshelf because I was like, there's no way this thing is gonna re-up again. There's no way. And here it is, right? It shot up. I think my problem was I never actually stopped to think to myself, what is it that is happening beneath what I can see? What is happening below these shoots? Because I thought, man, if the leaves of the plant are dead, the plant is dead. But clearly there was something going on beneath here. There is something going on beneath here that I was wildly unaware of, something of life and substance that is far beyond what I could have imagined or understood as a person who's a brand new plant dad. And it's got me thinking, it's got me wondering, like, as people, how often do we look at our lives the way we look at our plants? We're so concerned with the leaves and how we actually look as people to see, okay, cool, is stuff going well for me? Is stuff not going well for me? We look at this outward appearance of how people perceive us, and we treat that as the metric of how we're actually doing in life without actually having true consideration of what might be going on inside. Like, I wonder if we're concerned with what happens within our hearts, if we're concerned with what happens underneath. And when something is happening within us, I wonder how curious we are to know and find out what it is that's going on. Because the truth is, we can go and ask our friends, we can ask Instagram community, yo, what should I do to stay alive? What should I do to not be like, you know what I mean? And I wonder if there's a better way for us to take care of the root that we have in our lives, if there's a way for us to take care of what is happening inside of us, to take care of where we find our source of life. Because the truth is, we really can make the source of our life anything. We can try and make it anything, rather. I can try and make it my work. And my work, yes, sure, it will be nice. From time to time, I'll have great satisfaction. But the reality is, and what we found, a lot of us, is that making something like work or family or children or even church itself, if you try to make that the source of your life, it will lead you to a point where you are burnt out and without hope. Because the reality is those things in and of themselves do not have what it takes to give you, to give me life. Man, I want to propose to you that there is something that can give us life. I want to propose to you that there's someone who is the source of life. His name is Jesus. And so this week, we're going to be speaking about Jesus is the source. Now, if you've got your Bible with you, if you don't, can you grab it for a second real quick? But we're going to be reading a little bit from the book of John, which is a book in the New Testament. And we're going to be reading a little bit from chapter 15, where Jesus is speaking to some of the boys. Now, just to give you some context into the book of John, chapter 15. In chapter 15, Jesus is sitting with his disciples. And the reality is it's around the time where he's having his final supper with them. He's sitting with them and he's sharing these final words with the boys, and it's kind of like his final address of sorts, right? And we know from experience that when someone is having their final address, we really want to take care to what they're saying, because there's something of importance and weight with what a person chooses to have as their last words. And so as part of this like evening conversation that Jesus is having with the boys, he says some really interesting things. And in chapter 15 in particular, he speaks around the themes of bearing fruit, abiding in love, the hatred of the world, and the presence and the testimony of the Spirit. Like I'm going to unpack two of those. I'm not going to unpack all four of them, just because I think I want us to just unpack the first two, which are bearing fruit and abiding in love. And so what we're going to do is we're going to read from John chapter 1 to 8 first, which is the first theme. And then we're going to read from verse 9 to 17, which is the second theme. So read with me here in John chapter 15. Jesus says, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away, and every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. Already you have been cleaned because of the word that I've spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit, for apart from me, you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he is thrown away like a branch and withers, and the branches are gathered, thrown into the fire and burned. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, ask whatever you wish and it will be done for you. By this, my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit and so prove to be my disciple." So that is the beginning, opening address of this little portion of the chat that Jesus is having with the boys. And I think what it is, there are a few key things that stand out to me about this little portion of the address. And one of the greatest things that I've seen, and that is true about this, is that Jesus is in it that we might bear much fruit. And you might be wondering, well, why does it matter that we bear fruit? The reality is that if we bear fruit, it doesn't just impact me. Fruit, as we see it when you walk around from garden to garden, if you're ever walking in like a strawberry farm or a vineyard or an apple orchard, if you're walking around in there, you can take from the fruit, you take it, you eat it, you store some of it, and it feeds more than just the people who live on the land. It feeds more than just the ground below the tree. It feeds the people around. It is nourishment to people. And so when Jesus is concerned with us bearing much fruit because we are in him, it is because Jesus is so concerned with the world around us and with us that he wants us to bear much fruit. And what I find so interesting is this notion that Jesus mentions of the Father being the vine dresser, right? And him pruning the branches. Now, I had to go read some stuff, right? Because, yeah, sure, I'm a plant dad, but I'm not like, I'm not a viticulturist. I'm not I don't grow grapes. I don't know. So I had to go read some stuff, right? And I was quite taken by this concept of pruning, which it blew my mind. I'm not gonna lie, it blew my mind. Now, pruning, for those of you who don't know, especially with grapevines, is done in the winter. And why I find this so incredible is that in the winter is when we as people see things as dead. Not like this where it is green and lush and full of life, but it is where we see things as brown and dull and harsh. It's where we, if we were to contextualize it into our lives, it's when we say that we're in a dry season, when we say we're in a winter season as people, it's when things are not going well. It's when things seem to be really, really difficult, where we feel like things are hard. And what I find so crazy is that Jesus says the Father prunes us the same way that a vine dresser prunes the branches. Man, is it possible that in those moments where life seems really, really hard, that the Father's hand is here, carefully tending to you, pruning you, that you might bear much fruit? Is it possible that in those moments where things are incredibly, incredibly dry and dead, that the Father is like, it is now time to take away what was weak in you, so that what is strong in you that I've placed in you, that it might bear more fruit as soon as the season changes. And I think that's the case, because if that were not the case, why would Jesus use this analogy? Why would he use this particular image to say that the Father is the vine dresser and he's pruning? It's because he knows that his followers at the time would have been aware of when the time of pruning happens. It's when things are difficult, that the Father is doing something. And that has blown my mind, because I have come through some hard stuff, as I'm sure you have, as I'm sure we all will go through in the right seasons. And I wonder what happens when we allow ourselves to take a moment to say, Father, I know this is hard and I don't want to positive wash this, but I want to align my life to what you want to do in me. I know it's hard, but I know, Father, that your hand is there, because your word says that your hand is there, that your word says that you're doing this, that I might bear much fruit. And again, this fruit, as much as you might think, okay, cool, this is so that my family will be blessed. This is so that I will be rich and I'll be balling. This is so that I can be this super famous person in the Christian circles. Man, no, that's not what Jesus is saying. The fruit is not just for you. The fruit is for the community. The fruit is for the people around you, so that people might taste and see who Jesus is and know that he is good. This is what is so great about Jesus being the source. He is for you, but he is also for the world around you. Now, when we move on in that particular chapter, and we go to verse 9 to 17, where Jesus is speaking about abiding in love, I want to read that for us, because, guys, I really love John 15. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I actually love the book of John so much. Not more than Deuteronomy, but I love the book of John. Anyway, so from verse 9 to 17, man, I love this stuff. Okay, from verse 9. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept the Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things I've spoken to you, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be full. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends. For all that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. You do not choose me, but I chose you, and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give to you. These things I command you, so that you will love one another. Now, there's a lot happening in that particular portion of the conversation that Jesus is saying, but there's one word that sticks out that we've already mentioned, right? Abide, right? Jesus, abide in me as I've abode, as I abide in the Father. I think abode is the word. As I abide in the Father. And I don't know about you, but I'm not, sometimes, what does the word abide mean? What is to abide, right? And I, again, had to Google this because, let's be honest, we want to know what's going on. We want to study the scripture. Abide essentially means to stay or to make residence. That's crazy. And okay, I know, I'm excited about myself. You're about to be excited too. Why that's crazy is because when Jesus says something like abide in my love, what he's saying is it's an invitation. He's saying, make my love your home, reside there. It's an invitation for us to take his love, to take his command, to follow it, and by doing it, to abide in his love. And it's not to say that his command is something great and incredible that we can't do. He says, love your friends as I have loved you. No greater love is there than this, that one friend should lay it down for another. Now, I know it sounds intense to say that we should lay down our lives for our friends. But I wonder, is it more intense than, can you imagine for a moment, you're one of these 12 guys who's been hanging out with Jesus for about 3 years, and only at dinner in year number 3, Jesus is like, oh yeah, you're my friends now. Like, that's offensive to a lot of us as millennials. We're like, oh my gosh, we just met, so we are friends now. But Jesus is like, no, 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 no. Let me tell you something. There's something about friendship that is a far greater calling than what you understand it to be. Because there's something about imparting all that I know to you and you imparting all that you know to me and us choosing to share that with one another that brings us into this higher calling of friend. And once we're in this higher calling of friend, it is from that perspective that Jesus says, lay down your life for your friend. There is no greater call. And again, I wonder, and I just think to myself, is it possible that Jesus is asking us to make friends, to truly go and to share all that we know of him as he shared all that he knows of the Father, to go and share all that we know of him with people, so that once we've shared everything that we know with people outside of our Christian or church circle, that they too might be like, wow, I have encountered the love of Jesus simply by you sharing this thing. And from that point, we can then be like, it is now time for me to lay down my life for you in whatever way that may mean. Because again, when Jesus is the source, there is life in us in abundance to a point where even in the laying down of our life, as Jesus did, there is still resurrection life within us that it might never run out for us to keep on loving the way that he loves. And how incredible is it that the way that Jesus loves me and the way that Jesus loves his friends, the way he loves us, is the way that he's inviting us to be a part of. He's calling us to this, from this small little pithy way of love that we love, to a greater expression of what it means. Because again, Jesus loves you, but he also loves the world around you. He is the source for your life, but he's also the source for life for the people around us, right? And I think the final thing that I want to say about this is that the incredible thing about making the Lord's love our abiding place, the incredible thing about living in his love is that as we live there, we are transformed day by day into his likeness and into his thinking. So much so that as we walk through the world, people taste a sense of who Jesus is. And it's for that reason that in the next little portion of chapter 15, that Jesus speaks of the hatred of the world and how people will reject people who love the way that he loves. And he addresses it and he speaks as well to how the Spirit will testify about that. I encourage you to go and read more of John chapter 15. I encourage you to go and read more of the story of what Jesus is saying to his boys in the final address, because Jesus is saying something. Jesus was saying something then, and he is saying something now, something important about how life with him looks and how life around us can look when he is the one true source of life. And so I know that this message lands in different places for different people. I know that for some people, it's like, okay, but Jesus isn't, I don't know Jesus like that. Like he's a guy. You guys preach about Jesus at church, but he's not for me, you know? And to you who say that I have gone so far from God and church and anything Christianity, man, I want to invite you. I want to invite you, just as Warren did last week, that God is ready. God is ready because God cares about you and God is all in for you. He is inviting you, waiting to celebrate with you, to embrace you, because he wants to be the source of your life. He wants to be the place that you go to be alive. He wants to invite you into his story. And I know that there are others of you who, you love Jesus, right? And to those of you who love Jesus, man, amen, that is incredible. But to you, I want to remind you that we have access to the life and power of an incredibly loving Father and King. And to all of us, really, I want us to remember one thing. When Jesus is our source, right, everything changes. Whether you haven't known Jesus before or whether you are realizing again today that Jesus is really the source of your life, acknowledging that means that everything in your life will change. Because Jesus, again, cares about you, but he also cares about the world around you. Like, Jesus is using us as part of his plan to reach the world around us. And the reason that that is so important is because the same way that it looks like these plants are dying, man, there are a lot of people who don't have the spot or the space to feel like they're rejuvenated. There are a lot of people who are feeling right now, as we enter festive season, there are a lot of people who are feeling like there's nothing left, like no one cares. Jesus cares. And he wants to use us, invite us into reminding the world around us that he actually cares. Now, as we go into 2023, we as a church, we're going to be starting a new series at the beginning of next year called Belong to Build. We as a church are going to be building a lot more and turning our attention to building what Jesus is doing, because we have heard the Lord say to us that people belong here, but we have also heard him say that we are now here shifting gears to build what he is doing, that he cares about us and he cares about the world around us. And so what we're doing is we're going to be inviting our friends, we're going to be inviting colleagues, we're going to be inviting people who don't normally set foot on this campus, who don't normally attend online. We're going to be inviting them with a personalized box and saying, friends, God cares about you. And we want to invite you to come and be a part of what God is doing with us as Urban Life Church. And so I want to encourage you as our online community, as people watching this, wherever and whenever that you're watching this, join us in that. Join us in inviting the people around you to really come and taste and see what Jesus is doing. I really want to encourage you to take hold of Jesus as the source of your life, to really take part in and know that there's life and fruit and love that Jesus has for you. And more than that, man, I want you to take that, make it for yourself, but also make it for your community around you. Make it for the people around you, for your family around you, for your colleagues around you, for the people who hardly even know you around you, because Jesus cares about you and he cares about the people around you. Take care, friends. See you next time.
Amazing. What an incredible word from Mash. And thanks to Mash, I just want to honor him. He has been so faithful in serving in our online space, and he honestly preached an incredible word. And I don't know where you find yourself this morning, and I love what he was saying. Maybe it is that thing where you go, we're talking about Jesus is, and it can be difficult to go, but Jesus is the source for me. And maybe you find yourself in a space where you go, I don't know who this Jesus is. And I just want to encourage you this morning that the invitation is there to come. The invitation from Jesus is there for you wherever you are, regardless of what you've done. I just want to echo what he said, that Jesus is ready and waiting for you. So don't let you hold yourself back. Don't let your circumstances hold you back in this moment from accepting Jesus, because the invitation is there for you to come. And so thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's been so good to be together, and I trust that this is going to bless you. And hey, won't you share this with someone who might need this word? I love that about online, is that we actually get to share this. We can tag someone, we can share it across Facebook or YouTube, whatever it might be. Share the link, encourage someone this morning, and make sure to subscribe so that you can keep up to date with what's happening in the life of Urban Life Church. But other than that, from me this morning, I just wanted to say have a beautiful week further, and we'll see you next week.